Hello, hello, and welcome back to the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. It is the first of the month, so we all know what that means. We are joined today by the beautiful, the lovely, the talented Miss Carrie Brown. Carrie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
I am doing good. Carrie, I am so glad that you are here because I got questions, and I know that you got answers. It is so fun to see the feedback on our episodes, the YouTube comments and the little comments on the Facebook page and all that good stuff. You are a hit, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that you are sharing your knowledge with us. So, Carrie, what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to answer the eternal question, the most common question on the Facebook groups and all the social media, and that is,
what did Trump tweet today? Oh, is it keto? That's exactly right.
Is it keto? And particularly for new people who are, and it is, you walk into a grocery store and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of products, and suddenly you've got all these new things in your head and you're like, and often you can look at something and it's got all these fun, good, healthy words on the front, but you haven't learned how to read labels yet, and so we get people who will just take a picture and rush to the Facebook group and say, is this keto? Like, can I eat this? And so I thought it would be useful for people if we armed them, the whole teach a person to fish and you feed them to life for life, rather than people having to rely on other people. I thought it might be fun to give them some tools so that if they're not sure about something, they can more easily figure out for themselves if it's something they want to eat or not.
Exactly. Yeah, that is definitely the most common question that I get. I get it in text because my phone number is out there, so I'll get texts and Facebook messages probably 3 times a day. A picture of something. Can I eat this? No.
So
but my go-to, just so you know, my go-to is turn it around and read the ingredients on the back. And if there's a list of ingredients, don't eat it. Just walk away. You don't
if there's a list of ingredients. Spoken like a true carnivore, sir.
That's right. I'm not a carnivore, but boy, I am close. It sure does make life easy when I do these little experiments, and every time I'm like, gosh, darn it, this is so easy. Oh, I have to tell you before we get off. I meant to tell you this. I didn't buy it because it was way too expensive, but I'm definitely going to buy it next time I see it. I was at a butcher, and I've never seen a butcher that sells the tomahawk steaks. These tomahawk steaks were 3-inch thick tomahawk steaks. They were like 3.5 pounds. There's no way that I could eat a whole one by myself, but I'm willing to try.
You just want to take a picture and post it on Instagram, don't you?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got my sous vide. That seems like the perfect thing to throw in a sous vide and then sear it in a cast iron skillet with some butter. Oof, it looks good. Looks so good.
Well, we'll need an update on the tomahawk situation.
Well, now that I've said it, maybe I'll go ahead and maybe I can justify buying it. My wife was like, "You're not spending $40 on one steak." I was like, you're probably right. But she also should probably not check the bank account over the next couple of days.
So I think when people say, is it keto? Sometimes I think to myself, what does that even mean? Is it keto? And I think what people mean is, if I eat this, will I stay in ketosis? So
if I eat this, will I gain weight? That's usually
right.
That's
so I think that's what, is it keto? That's what it really means. The reason I'm questioning what that means is because ketosis is a metabolic state. It's not a food list. There is no black and white, this is keto, this isn't. So is it keto isn't a real question. So what we're really answering is, if I eat X, will I stay in ketosis? And the global answer to that question is, it depends.
Maybe. Right.
So if you're wondering how we're going to make this last an entire episode, we could make this last several episodes, but we're not going to. because it's very, very nuanced. That's the bottom line. And I think a lot of people want a black and white answer, and they want us to say, they want our blessing. Yes, you can eat that. No, you can't eat that. But life isn't like that. And a lot of the keto people, the keto leaders out there, will provide a list and say, follow that list. And while that is helpful particularly for new people, it's not actually true, because real life is a lot more nuanced than that. And I think it's important that you understand, even if you don't understand what all the nuances are, I think it's important for people to understand that it isn't black and white, and a food is not either keto or not keto, and that while you may use a food list to start with, once you get going, you should probably take the time to think about the nuances and steadily make better and better choices about what you choose to eat.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And those food lists make life easier in the beginning, but you want to get to the point where you have the freedom to eat what you want, but only want the things that are good for you. Right.
There's also a lot of different types of keto. If you're new, you'll see things like dirty keto, clean keto. You'll see lots of different names for it. And of course, within that, a lot of people think about dirty keto in different ways. So some person might think dirty keto includes X but not Y, and someone else may think that dirty keto includes Y but not X. And then, of course, there's the favorite acronym, if it fits your macros, IIFYM. And again, that's typically meant to define something that the purists look down on and say is really, really, really bad. But actually, it might not be. In some cases, it absolutely is. And in some cases, it isn't. So, for example, if it fits your macros, if a Snickers bar has 19 grams of carbs in it, could you eat it?
If that's the only thing you ate that day, I guess so.
If your carb macro for the day is 20 grams and your Snickers bar has 19, and if if it fits your macro person would say, absolutely, you can eat that Snickers bar because it fits in your macro of 20 grams of carbs. So for a lot of if it fits your macros group, anything goes as long as it keeps you within your macro percentages, particularly carbs. So those folks would tell you could eat a Snickers bar. Then there's if it fits your macros.
Those people are wrong, by the way, in case you know there's one.
Right, in case you're wondering. But also there's a kind of I've just invented this. There's a clean if it fits your macros, where we're talking about things like, for example, I have had gut issues forever, my entire life. I don't know why. Anyway, so I find it incredibly beneficial to eat a spoonful of fermented stuff. So I typically have a spoonful of fermented beets every night with my main meal. Now, a lot of the purists would yell at me and say, beets aren't keto.
Yeah.
But I'm only eating, I don't know, maybe 1 gram of carbs because I've only got a forkful of beets in that fermented thing, which is all I need to help my gut work better. So in that case, if it fits your macros, is actually an okay thing, because I'm eating such a small amount of something that tends to be carby, but that's not taking me over my day's 20 grams of carbs. So in that case, that's technically if it fits your macros, but that's not something I'm going to get bent out of shape about. And because it actually does my body good, because it's fermented, because beets are actually very nutritious and wonderful things apart from the high level of carbs, that I'm going to say that's okay. Whereas purists would say you can't eat beets.
Right. Kombucha is probably a different example, just because kombucha, the sugar is what makes it kombucha. Some of it obviously has been fermented out, but not all of it, because it's not vinegar, and you have no idea. Like there's no way for you to know how much sugar is in the glass of kombucha that you drink. So there is this kind of, some people say, since you don't know, don't drink it. It's not safe. But some people get a lot of benefit from drinking a fermented kombucha-like drink. And I think that's just like what you're saying. The carb count is not the only thing that we can think about. We've got to think about how this food affects us, improves or doesn't improve our health. That has to factor into the equation. And it's also why, for everything that we talk about, what's keto and what's not, and all this all the different things I have on my blog and your blogs and all this stuff, at the end of the day, man, you've got to make the decision for you. What does that food do to you? If it makes you feel better, then maybe that's something that needs to be included into your diet.
Right. So I think the question, is it keto? There is no black and white answer. Mm-hmm. Ketosis is a metabolic state. It's not a food list. You can eat whatever you like as long as it fits your macros, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll stay in ketosis, nor does it mean that you will be eating healthy foods. Not all foods that would be considered keto are healthy. And so it really depends where you are in not only whether you want to stay in ketosis or not, but whether you also want to take account of not eating foods that are inflammatory, or not eating foods that are going to give you other health problems that have nothing to do with whether you're in ketosis or not. So it is nuanced, and there's a lot more to it. And this may sound like we're muddying the waters and that we're making it confusing, but actually the intent is to make it less confusing, not more confusing, even though we're taking your food lists away and saying there is no food list.
No food for you.
So the answer to is it keto is it depends. We can give you guidelines, but you have to also layer over your unique circumstances onto those guidelines. You may also not be doing keto for the same reasons as a lot of people. A lot of people come to keto to lose weight or to burn fat. You may look at everything differently rather than someone like me who came to keto to heal my brain. So you may not have any issue with eating any type of fat or oil, because whatever keeps you in ketosis will more than likely help you burn fat, and that's your goal. Whereas for a lot of us, we have a goal that is also tied to other health benefits. So there are a whole bunch of fats or oils, which technically, of course, they're keto because there's no carbs in them. So they won't knock you out of ketosis, but they're not things that Aaron and I and a whole lot of other people would choose to eat because they are highly processed, they're inflammatory, they cause all sorts of other problems. One specific example, the highly processed seed and vegetable oils, we don't eat them. But that isn't because they knock us out of ketosis. They're oils. They don't. They're 100% keto, but we don't want to eat them because of the other nefarious effects that they have on our body. But I think people can get very confused about but it's 100% fat. Why isn't vegetable oil keto? Well, technically it is, because it won't knock you out of ketosis. but a lot of keto people still won't eat them because of the damaging effects that they have on our bodies. And I think a growing number of people come to keto or start keto for weight loss, and then they realize that they actually are here for long-term health benefits. And so they choose to stop eating all the fats and oils. They start to become pickier about only picking the ones that are truly healthy for us, rather than any fat or oil that will not kick them out of ketosis.
If you want to just lose weight, like if that's your only goal, just stop eating anything. Just don't even worry about ketosis. Just stop eating. But this lifestyle is one of long-term health. And, the way that you achieve long-term health is paying very, very close attention to what you put in your mouth. And it's more than just weight loss. It's health. We want to be healthy. We don't just want to be thin. We want to be healthy. Now, if I could be thin and healthy, that'd be good, man. That'd be good for me too.
But you're getting there. It's a process, and you're moving towards all your goals, and that's awesome.
Yep.
But there's also other factors that we need to consider when we think about the question, is it keto? Things like, so a lot of folks will just say nuts are keto. Well, that depends, because nuts and most things actually are on a continuum. There are nuts that are way less carbier and nuts that are way more carbier. So to globally say, oh, nuts are a free-for-all or nuts are keto would not really be accurate because of the nuance between the actual nuts themselves. So cashews, for example, and pistachios are down the carbier end, which means that for your 20 grams of carbs a day, you're going to be able to eat a lot less of those than you are your almonds, which are in the middle, or your walnuts, your Brazil nuts, your macadamia nuts, which are right down the low carb end of the nut spectrum. So you'll be able to eat more volume of those because there's less carbs in them. So to say that blanket, nuts are keto is not really helpful either. You need to understand that if you're going to eat a handful of cashews, you're consuming way more carbs than if you consumed a handful of macadamia nuts.
Right. And also, just because I like to throw this out there when people are talking about nuts, you got to be very, very careful with how your nuts are prepared, because there's a lot of nuts that are roasted in like some really crappy oils. Like Planters, I know is the worst. You almost can't find a Planters nut that hasn't been roasted in safflower seed oil or sunflower seed oil or something like that. So just be careful that if you're eating a roasted nut, or a nut that's prepared, that it's, that they're using something a little bit more, no polyunsaturated fats were used in the roasting of your nuts, if you can find them.
And that has just reminded me how sad it was the day that I turned over the packet of the smokehouse almonds with the
Blue Diamond.
Oh, and I turned the packet over and I read it and I was like, good Lord! Like, if you don't want to be sad, don't read the back, because you cannot. Well, you can, of course. You're an adult. You're all adults. You can eat whatever you like. But if you are really focused on staying in ketosis and being healthy, and you look at the packet of the Blue Diamond Smokehouse almonds, you ain't ever eaten those again. And I was just like, I nearly cried, because those things are so delicious. And I was like, well, yeah, no, they're no longer for me. But if you're new to keto, you might go, oh, almonds, yay, grab the packet. They're just almonds with a bit of flavoring on. There's actually a lot more to those almonds than might meet the eye.
Yep. In fact, again, just almost anything with a flavor, that flavor is probably bad news.
So the other thing that can really cause a lot of nuance is quantity. You can't say, and Erin and I were just talking about this right before we got on to recording. And as Erin said, anything is keto if you eat little enough of it. If you eat a small enough amount, everything is keto, because Keto is a metabolic state. So if you eat a small enough amount, you're going to stay in ketosis simply because you haven't eaten enough carbs to knock you out of ketosis. And this, because I've just remembered that this is video. So this is Priscilla. This is Priscilla the kitten.
I met the other one earlier,
Ermintrude.
Ermintrude.
Ermintrude. You all might get to see Ermintrude in a minute. Anyway, this is Priscilla. I'm going to put her down.
Goodbye, Priscilla.
So, and for example, going back to my fermented beets, would I eat a pound of beets? No, because that probably would have me not being in ketosis. But my forkful of fermented beets that I eat to help restore my gut health, absolutely not a problem. And as Erin says, anything in a small enough amount is keto.
Right.
Does that mean you should eat it?
Right. Doesn't mean you should eat it.
Doesn't
and
mean
eating
you should
that many
eat it.
beets will make your pee turn crazy colors, which I didn't know before the first time I ate a beet. Which, I was like, what in the heck?
When a long time ago, pre-keto, pre-low carb, I used to make the most amazing beet, or as we call it in England, beetroot soup. And that was a thing.
Yeah.
Beetroot colored pea was a thing.
I believe it. Yeah, I was not prepared.
So you have to think about quantity. Oh, and another great example, because right before we started this, I actually was at the store. I have a fleet of British guests coming this next week, and I'm going to make 5 different types of ice cream. So I went to the store to get all the things, keto, of course. I went to the store to buy all the things, and one of my favorite things in the world is fresh cherries. And I recently moved from Seattle, where we have the best cherries, Rainier cherries, and we're famous for them. And I walked in the store, and they had big packets of Rainier cherries here in Connecticut. And I do this most summers. I will buy a pound of cherries, and I will eat them. And I will do it once because cherries are my favorite thing. Right. And so I'll buy a pound of cherries, and over 3 or 4 days I'll eat dinner, and then I'll just have a little handful of cherries, and that's it. I'll do it once in the summer every year. And in fact, last year I didn't do cherries, but this year they were there and they were beautiful, and they were Rainier cherries from my old hometown of Seattle. And so the cherries came home with me, and you can all fire me if you like, but, if I ate, because, there may be some people listening to this who are screaming, cherries aren't keto. Well, if I ate the entire pound at once, I probably wouldn't be in ketosis if I measured. But 1, I'm not going to eat the entire pound at once. 2, I'm also going to eat them along with a nice piece of protein and some fats, so they won't be digested as fast. 2, it's a whole fruit, it's not juice, so the fiber in there will mitigate some of the carbs. But also, 10 minutes once a year, it's not going to kill me.
Exactly. I would have figured that you would have been done with ice cream for a little while, because I know you just made like 200 batches or something crazy for.
I did for Keto Fest. I made 2 different flavors, and we had 140 VIPs at Keto Fest, and so I had to make 280 portions of ice cream. Luckily, making ice cream is my favorite thing in the whole world. So. But anyway, so the cherry example was, if there is, my rule of thumb is, if there is something I absolutely love from my pre-keto life, once a year, once in a blue moon, as long as it's a whole fresh food. So I'm not talking about going and buying, a tub of Ben & Jerry's or 3 packets of Little Debbie's, whatever they are, or that. If it's a whole fresh food, like my fermented beets or, a pound of cherries, once in a blue moon, I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. And it's your body. It's your life. Do what you want.
Just don't eat 3 pounds at once, because
Right.
quantity does matter. You know, I could probably eat my handful of cherries on their own and remain in ketosis, but I'm then going to focus on protein and fats for all the other food that I have that day. I'm going to make sure that there's no other carbs in the rest of my meals that day. So you can balance it out like that as well.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything that I know you're kind of edging towards carnivore, but is there any examples you have where things that you eat, quantity is a thing?
Yeah. Pardon me. The big thing for me that was tough, the two things that I had to, the first thing I had to do was limit my quantity because I was eating too much of it. And then the second thing I had to do was really get 99% of it just out of my diet, whereas nuts, which we've already talked about, and cheese. The cheese especially is hard because I love cheese. The sharper the cheddar, the happier I am. I just like a really sharp cheddar. I like mozzarella. I like, I don't like brie, but I don't like the really stinky cheeses, but the real milder flavor cheeses, love them. And I can eat them all as much as I can. So I really had to cut a lot of that out and cut it down to like maybe twice a week, or I was just eating a little bit of cheese. And then finally I was like, I'd probably be better with getting them out of my diet altogether. And the cheese went hard. Like it was much easier for me to give up nuts because I didn't really care too much about them. But boy, getting rid of the cheese was tough. It was really tough.
So I completely lost my train of thought. I had a little cat.
Yes, you were being attacked.
I was corralling a kitten.
The cat was all over you.
So if you're new, I hope this is making sense for you. One of the things also talking about hidden carbs is things like heavy cream. There's a general notion out there that heavy cream is a free-for-all because it's a fat, and it is mostly fat, but there are, because it's made from milk, which has lactose in, although most of the lactose is gone, there is an amount of carbs in heavy cream. And so you may inadvertently be, packing on the carbs without realizing it and not counting them because you didn't realize there were any in there. And one of the things that make labeling difficult is that if there's less than a gram in whatever the unit of measure is, they don't have to state it on the label. Yep. So if they have heavy cream and it's like it says a serving size is a teaspoon, it's going to say no carbs, but that isn't actually true. It's like 0.8 of a carb. And so as you can see, by the time you get to like half a cup, you're actually, you got 2 or 3 carbs going on there. Right. And so there's nuance like that you have to think about when you're thinking about, is a food keto? Cream is going to appear on any keto food list. But that still doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all, because there are carbs in there that you may not have been aware of.
So my 2 favorite examples of this are Tic Tacs. They will proudly state that they are sugar-free when they are 100% sugar. That's all they are, is sugar. And but there's just not enough to trigger the U.S. label warnings. And then Cool Whip. Most Cool Whip says it's trans fat free. It's just one giant tub of trans fat. That's all it is, but it's trans fat free because it doesn't, trigger the junk.
So serving size is important.
Definitely.
So if you're at the store and you're looking at something and you're like, is it keto? What are you going to do? Other than taking a picture of it and posting on Facebook and hoping that someone sees it and can answer you, here's what you can do to help yourself until you get to know what you can have and what you can't. So, and I'm not sure which episode it was, either the last one or the one before, we talked about labeling. And that you should go back and listen to that one, because that will have a lot more information. But when we're talking about just, is it keto, you want to flip the product over. You certainly don't want to believe anything on the front of the label that says low carb or keto. Even if it says keto, don't believe it.
Front of the label means nothing.
Front of the label means nothing.
Means slightly more.
So flip it over, and you're going to look down the label until you see carbohydrate, and you're going to see a total number, total carbs. And then underneath that, you're going to see fiber and a number. You're probably going to see sugar alcohols and a number, and then added sugars and a number. So that's what you want to focus on when you're thinking about, is it keto, i.e., is this likely to knock me out of ketosis? You also have to keep an eye on the serving size, because they will often, you'll read the back and you'll think, oh, this whole packet is a serving. And then you realize that the whole packet is 4 servings, which means you have to multiply all those carbs by 4.
Right.
And even on things like, so Aaron was talking about kombucha, some of them, if you look at the back of them, they're so naughty. You look at the carbs and you think, oh, it's 4 carbs. You know, do I want to spend my 4 carbs on this bottle of kombucha? Can I, cut my carbs down somewhere else during the day? And you don't look at the serving size, but some of the kombuchas you look up and it's like 2 or 3 or 4 servings in that bottle. So actually, if you drank that whole bottle, which you're thinking is 1 serving, it's actually 4. So when you're thinking about, is this going to knock me out of ketosis, you're looking at the little bit that says carbohydrates and all the breakdown underneath. And then you're looking for the serving size so that you can know what is in the entire packet. Now, if you're doing total carbs, you'll look at the carbohydrate number, and then you will subtract. If there's a number underneath that says fiber, and there's a number underneath that says erythritol or xylitol or sugar alcohols or allulose, you're also going to subtract that. That will give you the number of carbs per serving. Then look at the serving size and multiply it by whatever the serving size is. That's the number of carbs in that entire packet or jar or can.
And everyone needs just to remember that food companies hate you, and they are actively trying to deceive you. And so
yes.
you do not have a good relationship with any company that's trying to feed you food, unfortunately.
Right. So that will pretty much answer your question of how many carbs are in there. Is it likely to knock me out of ketosis? Bearing in mind what else you're planning to eat for the rest of that eating window or that day. But then if you're not the Snickers, if Snickers fits my macros, I'm okay with it. If you're not in that camp and you are doing keto for general health or specific health like brain health or some other problem rather than just weight loss, you're also going to want to have a look at the ingredients and have a look at the ingredients that are in there. And even if the carb count is fine for your day, if it has grains, if it has any sugars, if it has any vegetable oils, if it has any soy products, you for health reasons, you probably want to put it back. Even if the carb number fits within your daily macros, you probably don't want to eat it, because those things are going to be more than likely inflammatory or nefarious to your bodily systems in some way.
Right.
What did I miss? Grains, sugars, vegetable oils, soy. What did I miss? Peanuts. So for some people, peanuts are highly inflammatory. For some, they aren't. And this is, again, where there's more nuance. Some people can eat peanuts fine, some people can't. Some people can eat dairy fine, some people find it highly inflammatory. Some people can't
eat eggs.
Right. Some people can't eat eggs.
Sorry for those people.
So this, I hope you're starting to understand why the question, is it keto, is not really a question that anybody can answer. And there's a lot more to it than just, will this thing push me out of or keep me in ketosis?
And it's and not to muddy the waters here, but there's a difference between the sugar, in a Snickers bar and a bottle of kombucha. There's a difference between, don't eat wheat. We say don't eat grains, but there's a difference between the grains in a loaf of Wonder Bread versus a loaf of homemade sourdough bread made with archival wheat that's been fermenting on your on your counter for a month. I mean, those are different things that will affect your body in different ways. Not that you should be drinking a ton of kombucha or eating a ton of homemade sourdough bread. But if you have a little piece of one or the other, it's going to affect you different than if you ate some really heavily processed, commercialized, crappy food that's been, sprayed with glyphosate and, all kinds of weed killers and everything else, than something that you've had some level of control of from start to finish.
Right. And also one of my favorite things is, for me, so once a year in the spring for a week, I will get up in the morning and I will have a teaspoon of local raw honey, because for me, I find that will stop any allergies for an entire year. One teaspoon of raw local honey, depending on whatever else I eat during the rest of the day. If I'm doing carnivore that week, 1 teaspoon of honey is not going to budge my ketosis in the slightest.
Right.
Do I suggest using honey in all your baked goods instead of a sugar alcohol? No. Right. But 1 teaspoon for medicinal purposes, one day, 1 spoonful in the morning, carnivore the rest of the day, so that it gets me through the allergy season without having to take any OTC or prescription pharmaceuticals. In my little world, that's a far better option. Absolutely. Than taking the drugs. So that's what I will do. And I just make sure that week that I'm having a teaspoon of raw honey in the morning, I'm not consuming a ton of carbohydrates by way of vegetables or heavy cream or any other form. Some people will call that if it fits my macros, and I guess it absolutely is, but that's a far cry right. from the folks who eat a Snickers bar because it fits their macros.
Yep. Because you're doing it because it helps you be healthy. That's what it comes down to. Will this food make you healthy, or will it make you sicker? And that needs to enter in the equation. It can't just be what's the carb count. There are other factors at play.
What did I miss?
Let's see. We covered. Actually, you mentioned soy, but are there? What are your views on soy? Are there times when you should consider eating it?
I haven't been persuaded yet that there's any reason to eat soy.
Okay.
And as I understand it, is a hormone disruptor, and particularly bad for men. So it messes with your estrogen, and heaven knows my estrogen is messy enough without making it. Genetically, I'm estrogen dominant. So I'm certainly not going to eat anything that has a potential to disrupt my estrogen anymore. So I've read of all the things I've read about soy, there were way more against in terms of hormone disruption than there were fors. So I'm soy's on my do not eat list.
Yeah. And, sometimes you just have to kind of, make your best educated effort. I mean, it's nice that you and I, because we have these podcasts and I get to talk to, if I have a question about something, I go find the guy who has studied it and have him on the podcast. I mean, that's why my podcast exists. People think that my podcast exists because, I want to get this message out. Yeah, kind of. It really exists for me. It really exists for my benefit. But most people don't have that. They don't have that huge advantage that I have, and that you have. You just have to, go with your best guess on some of these kind of fringe foods.
So, and there are, Another thing that comes to mind is, the gums that are typically used in keto baking, xanthan gum, guar gum, konjac flour. Are they keto? Well, they're not going to put you out of ketosis, but some people don't react, a small number don't react well to them. So should you eat them? No. If there's anything that you react in a poor way to, you should stop eating it, regardless of whether of how many carbs it has. I went through a period where if I ate lamb, my feet would swell to the point where I couldn't walk because I couldn't bend. I couldn't flex my ankle and my feet. So I did not continue to eat lamb, right? So even though lamb is one of the best things for keto because it's so fatty, that it's kind of got all the fat built in. So lamb is fabulous for keto, but I'm not going to eat it when it's causing a bad reaction in any way on my body. So I have learned, I started off kind of looking at a food list, but as I've gone along, I've learned to listen to my body, which becomes a lot easier once your body starts to heal and you start to become healthier. It becomes a lot easier to go, oh, that doesn't feel good, or I woke up and my joints hurt. Okay, what did I eat yesterday? I know I didn't have carbs. I know I didn't go over my carb limit, so it's not that. What did I eat that may have caused it? And so that's how I now work out what I am and am not going to eat within the realms of ketosis, because there's some things that affect me badly. I'm not going to eat those regardless of what food list they're on.
There was a lady on the podcast 2 months ago. Her name is Sally Norton, who can't eat, among other things, she can't eat almond meal because it's high in oxalates, and oxalates were causing a lot of damage to her. So yeah, definitely.
So I know that some new people are going to be really disappointed because we haven't given you a black and white list of eat this, don't eat that. But I do hope that ultimately this has lessened your confusion, because when you go out in the big wide world of keto, you're going to meet a lot of people who will say, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, and they're not actually telling you the truth. Not that they're lying to you, but they're not giving you the nuanced truth, and you could come unstuck by following that advice. So that's why we're making it gray, so that you can understand how it really works rather than sticking to a food list that may or may not be helping you. I am not a fan of eliminating foods that you enjoy or that are good for you for no reason.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So you may be following a food list that is eliminating foods that you enjoy and are good for you. And that's why we're talking out loud about this, in the hopes that will actually help you, and also stop you from feeling like the food police are hovering over your left shoulder.
And I know people love lists because one of my top sources of traffic is people searching for Dr. Westman's page 4.
Page 4.
Because I've got a copy of it on my website. And so people come to my website to find that list, and people love it. People love lists of food,
and as I say, lists of food are great to get started with. They absolutely are. They will really help you. But as you get going, and as you start to see, if you're on Facebook and other forms of social media, you might start you might start to see some of these arguments, are carrots keto? And someone will say, yes, they are. And someone else will say, no, they're not. And we don't want you to be confused as to why there are two answers to the same question about one food. And so in the case of carrots, it would be the quantity, whatever else you've eaten that day, all of these other factors. So there is not a black and white answer, are carrots keto? However, if you're just starting, you've got a lot of weight to lose, I don't recommend that you eat a ton of carrots because they are carby.
Yeah. root vegetables in general are very carby. Carrie, you have been once again a wealth of information. We Can you remind us tell us your website and your Twitter and all that good stuff, so my listeners can be reminded of where they can go to follow you and all that good stuff?
So my website, which I, for reasons I don't know now, bought 100 years ago when the internet was barely a thing, carriebrown.com, CARRIEBROWN. And I don't know why I bought it, but I'm really glad I did now.
Yeah, exactly.
And paid my $10 a year for 100 years. And then suddenly I was like, wow, I'm glad I have that. So carriebrown.com, and there's actually a tab at the top, which is either called Carrie Brown or FAQ. And there's a thing that says where to find me. If you click on that, there's like every link to every place you can find me: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. But generally I am either at The Real Carrie Brown or Real Carrie Brown. But if you go to carriebrown.com, that'll give you an easy click on page of all the places you might like to bump into me.
So have you ever met the fake Carrie Brown? I know there's like a sportscaster or somebody out there with your name.
Actually, I have had phone calls from other people searching for the fake Carrie Brown. There's a lot of Carrie Browns, and there was actually a bunch of them living in Seattle, and apparently not all of them have paid their debts. So I've had quite a few phone calls looking for the other Carrie Browns through my life.
Yeah, so we have 3 generations of my first name, last name. My dad, me, and my son are all, none of us are juniors or third or whatever, but we all have that same first name, and it's spelled different in 2 of us. But I still get a lot of phone calls from people like looking for my dad, or some of them are looking for my son, and I'm sure they've gotten phone calls of people looking for me. So it's funny.
That's all I got for you today.
Perfect. Well, Carrie Brown, thank you so much for coming on once again, giving us all this fantastic information. We're going to put links to everything that she talked about, her website and all that good stuff there in the show notes. You can find that at mysugarfreejourney.com/podcast and find links to this episode and all the podcasts there. If we said something in a previous episode you want to talk about, or if you want to check out all of Carrie Brown's episodes here on the My Sugar Free Journey podcast, you can find them all there. So Carrie, thank you so much once again for coming on the show.
And we'll check back in September and talk about more fabulous keto food.
Fantastic. All right, guys, hold on. We'll be right back with some more information.